Faith Forged in Fire, where we dive headfirst into the unique challenges and triumphs that comes with being a firefighter, all while exploring what it means to live out a biblical worldview. Join us as we find hope, perseverance, and faith in the midst of the heat and chaos. Welcome to the podcast.
Welcome to the podcast, folks.
Oh, let's start that over. You weren't anywhere near your mic.
Ladies and gentlemen.
That's better.
Ooh, I like that.
Welcome to the podcast, folks. Tonight we are going to go over the impact of being a firefighter during the holidays.
Ooh.
Which is a hot topic. We've all had a busy day, so I'm not completely prepared, but
That's okay.
It seems as though everybody's a little particularly, well, in our house we say spicy, right? Grumpy.
Little grumpalicious today.
And it might have something to do with the road conditions right now. Resemble something that a Zamboni would be jealous of.
And as at least a couple of us have been out at least once today dealing with
rollovers, and I think my top speed on the way here was about 41 miles an hour.
Yes.
You're lucky. I think I hit about 34.
Yeah,
And
sometimes that was about 10 miles an hour too fast.
It's supposed to be worse by the time you guys go home, unfortunately.
I know.
Yeah, that's all right. So we're going to go over this. I think it's a good topic that we can talk about because during the holidays, it always seems like the pager goes off at Thanksgiving, Christmas Eve. You got family events going.
Yep.
That takes you away. A lot of people, I think, have the habit of going, well, that's part of the job. You signed up for it kind of deal.
Right.
But I think there's good and bad. It's like, PJ, if you get a call during the middle of the day on Christmas and you're able to go, what have you sacrificed in that?
Well, yeah. So for us on Christmas Day, that's our immediate family day. So, I might not have, in a sense, in that moment, to answer that specifically, I might not have sacrificed in the way that, so maybe my kids, it's not that I missed my kids opening gifts, but now they have to wait for dad to get home. I've sacrificed family time. We usually sit around, do movies, whatever. So, and that has happened. In fact, this topic, my wife was the one that said, hey, you guys should talk about this. Cause I was like, what are we going to talk about in the month of December? And she actually came up with this week and next week's topic. But
Does she listen to the podcast? Your wife?
Supposed to, but she doesn't. She always says, man, I got to listen more. And I hassle her because my kids will ask me some question like, what's the Behind the Backs podcast? I said, you just got to listen to my podcast and you'll know. So anyway, here's what she reminded. And it's funny because I didn't even remember this until she said it. And this was several years ago. Like we had some of her family coming over. We had this whole thing planned. And we get a call. I get a call. And so now she's worked all day, got ready to host, and I'm gone for almost the entire time. All right. Now, she's supportive. She wasn't upset, but obviously it probably made more of an impact on her than it did for me. And so I think that's part of it, even, is just thinking about what it does for our families while we're gone right there.
Right.
And that's happened more than once. When my grandma was still alive, Christmas Eve was always at her house. And one year we had a fire. It was in the morning before we were going to leave to go over there. And so I ended up going over quite late. And if I remember correctly, that actually ended up being the last Christmas Eve with my grandma before she died. And so at the time it didn't, it was like, well, I'm late. And now I look back and I'm like, well, I lost.
Right.
I lost a good portion of that last Christmas Eve with grandma.
Yeah. How do you think that affects your kids? Do you think it's a negative thing that you have to leave, or, they're getting older. Two of them are. Do you think they understand that it's not dad using the pager as an excuse to get away from them for Christmas?
Yes.
Do you think they understand that you're going to go out and
I'm blessed because the kids are generally, sometimes they get disappointed if I have to go on a call, but they're generally proud that I'm a firefighter. There's a lot of times they're like, the pager will go off and they're pushing me out the door. Like, Dad, you got to go. Dad, you got to go. So that makes it easier than, Daddy, do you have to go this time? And they know that They just know generally if the pager goes off, I'm going to go. Now, if we were literally, and it depends on the call, and I think as volunteers we kind of have that leeway in a sense, right? If we're in the middle of opening gifts and it's something small, then I may not go. I try to go even on those. If it's a structure fire or a PI with a pin in or something like that, well, sorry guys. Because again, on the other side of that is on the holiday, how many of our people are around?
That's the big challenge.
And that's why if I am around, I go, because I don't know how many other people are around or available to respond.
You might be the only one going.
I might be.
Right. I think we should preface for the viewer just to kind of let them know that it's one of those things that the general public kind of takes for granted, is that, you have a Monday through Friday 9 to 5 job. And in most jobs that are not public safety or essential jobs, you get your holiday season off, whether it's Christmas, Thanksgiving, or whatever, Easter. And, in jobs like the fire service, police, hospitals, there are jobs that people have to work and someone needs to be there. So, while you're enjoying that time with your family because you have the time off, someone needs to run a call because the calls don't stop
right
on Christmas Day.
Well, I think we learned all of this during the pandemic, right? I mean, what better time to highlight all of those essential functions than during the pandemic, where people were literally labeled as essential, such as nurses and doctors. And,
absolutely.
Yeah. Fire and EMS. I mean,
but, and even to say,
boosted my self-confidence.
You are.
I was sad that at that time, my current job was essential. I was like, oh man, my kids are non-essential workers and they were making more money than I was.
Man.
That hurt.
Yeah.
But what the viewer, I understand, and again, you go to the paid departments versus the volunteers. A paid, guy is scheduled to work that day. And so usually, the stations will do something that day as they'll have the families in, whatever. But again, call comes in.
And I think that's a little different. And I was thinking about that with this topic because they get to, sorry to interrupt you, Steve. We'll kick it back over to you. But I think we need to call this out real quick because, and I really say this carefully, if somebody's a full-timer, I don't want them to take offense to this by any means. But the reality is if they know they're working that day on Christmas Day, they normally schedule around that. And at least for me, and I know some people it's hard because Christmas is Christmas. For me, I don't really care what day we do it on.
Yeah.
It's just the event of doing it with the family. So they can move that to another day.
Absolutely.
It's
and know they're not going to get
making that attempt to actually be together.
In the volunteer, even if I move it to a different day, I might get a call.
Yeah. Well, I was just going to say, Steve, what I was going to say is, and you brought up the point about who's available, is that understand that, in the volunteer world, what stinks about your situation is someone's got to run the call. Someone's got to go because you can't have a call and everybody be going, well, I'm sorry, I'm doing this stuff with my family. I can't make it right now. Someone has to show up to the call, or there could be a tragic event that happens if someone's there. The paid guys, like you're right. Yeah, you're on shift and it's Christmas Day, but you just know that's your job for the day. Right. For the volunteer, it doesn't matter. Well, someone has to do it.
I think that's one way where it is tougher to be more on a volunteer department because you don't know when it's more disruptive to your life than it is with when it's your job and you're going to be there, what your schedule is going to be. And especially when, if you have leadership that's willing to let you be flexible and maybe take some of that time off or trade shifts with somebody who maybe doesn't have kids or something, or they may just want the overtime or something, I think it's easier to work that out. Excuse me. But when, like you said, you can try to schedule around, hopefully, not getting a call. It doesn't matter when it is, you might get called out.
Right.
Yeah. And it's the not knowing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can't tell you how many times the kids sit down and start opening gifts and you're going like, oh, please don't go off.
Yeah.
Please don't. Because now you're back to, I, for lack of better words, have to triage it.
Right.
If it's a small call and that somebody's around, you might tend to go like, well, they're opening gifts, I'm going to stay here. But then you're kind of praying. I mean, I never want a structure fire. I didn't get into this I got into it to fight fire, but that's the last thing you really want to do. Right. So you're kind of hoping, well, if it's something, I hope it's just a slide off that I don't have to go to. And then if it's a structure fire, you're going like, oh, this just ruined the whole day. Right. It's not a.
And you say that I don't have to go to, but we kind of make that call. Right. And then who goes?
Right.
right? Somebody's still going. That happened for my son's birthday this year. We were busy with church. We were busy with a lot of things, and his gifts kept getting pushed off. And so we finally said, all right, we're going to do it now. And no more did we sit down to open gifts, and the pager went off. And he kind of looked at me like, Dad. And so I jumped in our group text. I'm like, hey, and it wasn't what we would consider a major call, and just said, hey, it's my son's birthday. We pushed this thing off. And, cause it was like lines down or something, and so that one I didn't go, but yeah, it's a tough thing, Yep.
So Jake, did you have kids when you didn't have kids when you were in the fire service, did you?
No, I can tell you now though, having kids and I've told you guys countless times how overwhelmingly busy I am with different things in life. And, but as we talk, I think about that too, right? Of like, I'm not going out to a fire, but when it comes to, working full time, running a business full time, running a nonprofit, helping out with a school that I volunteer for, it's still a lot of time taken away from them. And so I try to be cognizant of that as well when I leave the door and, think like, man, I'm not going to be home for the kids, or I'm not going to see the kids today, or,
right.
Whatever that is. I think it's the same feel though, as when you get called out to, a fire, right, and have to leave the kids. And
yeah.
So on the other hand, we'll go this way. I wasn't living with my parents when I was in the fire service. PJ wasn't either.
Yeah.
So I know that you started this very
I was 16.
young.
Yeah.
How do you think that affected what do you think your parents thought of that? I mean, did you ever remember that when you were on the force and you were living with your parents?
No,
getting a call where you had to make that decision whether you were going to leave or
no. At 16, like between school and friends and let's be honest, most 16-year-olds don't take their parents into consideration. So I don't know how they felt. Honestly, okay. I don't know how they felt about it. I mean, they were fine when I joined. Like they were fine with me joining and everything, and they were very encouraging of that. But when I had to leave, I mean, I'd remember my mom saying like, yeah, be careful. But that was about the extent of it. So, I mean, she would know if it was like a bad call, like, she would kind of feel it out of like, do I ask, do I give him space? And normally it was just give me space and let me process.
But you don't remember him being upset if you got a call on a holiday or a birthday or something?
Nope. I think they were pretty understanding of that actually.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay.
Chief, there's another, maybe you're going to bring this up, but there's just another side. I put this down. Just thinking about the impact that calls have around the holidays, like nothing is worse.
Oh, yeah.
And this has happened several times. Nothing, I shouldn't say no. There isn't one that I would say is worse, but it's never fun trying to pull water soaked, smoke covered Christmas gifts out of a house that's burned so that there's something left for this family at Christmas time. And I say nothing's worse, but there is. Even like a fatal accident, it just hits because it hits the family even harder.
I've thought about that quite often because, like in a fatal car accident, say, or a class 1 CPR call where you lose the patient, that's something that's going to stick with that family the rest of their lives. It's everybody else is like, 10 more days till Christmas, and these people are going like, yeah. 10 more days until the day I lost my dad,
right? Exactly.
Whoever. And I think that really probably changes Christmas for a lot of people
and not to mention you wonder like a lot of, when I've had those calls, I often wonder like, okay, how many people are at a house somewhere having a great time waiting, wondering where is this person?
That, and like you're saying, you were going to wait for the kids to wake up in the morning, to open up your gifts. The call goes out early, so you're at the call. Now that when you get home,
right,
you were just at somebody's house that's having the worst Christmas day ever.
And I got to go have fun.
Now you get to go home and open gifts, and your life goes on, and you're thinking of all the other family members that are in the same position, but now in the back of your mind, you're still trying to be festive. You're trying to enjoy,
trying to be
Christmas,
engaged. Yep.
But you're going like, man, that hurt.
Yeah.
That one hurt.
Yeah, especially when it deals with kids, right? And you're going home for your kids. It's just that direct comparison, and you can't help but draw that line. But these are things that I just taking a moment to appreciate how these are just things that firefighters think about, or people who were in the fire service. Like I don't think most people think about that, of like the events leading up to it. Right. And then for us, we think about those things, like what we were doing right before the call happened. And
now you walk in the door.
Yeah.
And now back to the shoes in the closet. You walk in the door, you take your jacket off, and you proverbially have to open up the closet,
right?
Throw those shoes in the closet and close the door and be a different person.
Right.
Yeah. You have to be the dad. You have to be the father,
right?
The husband, those kind of things. And then you just, hopefully you can process it later.
Unlike other times when it's a little easier to, as you said, Jake, come home and just have some time to process a tough call, because they're ready to keep going with whatever you were doing. They already gave up however much time.
Right.
And they may not have any idea.
No,
they may have thought you were going on a 60-year-old diff breather.
Right.
And it's okay.
And honestly, hopefully that is the case. Hopefully they don't know. Hopefully, because as a parent, that's what I'm hoping for.
My kids listen to the pager all the time. Like they have an idea of what I'm going to. Yeah. I try not to shield them from that.
Is it fair to say though, for your kid, because they were like born into it, right?
Right.
And so I think maybe, and this is just me, assuming, or not me even assuming, but wondering, is it easier for them to be able to understand that than other kids, because they were born into it? They understand.
That's all they've known.
It's all they've known. Right. So I have to think, compared to kids who might really not understand it, why dad's leaving or coming back. And
this is, go ahead.
Like with you, if you're having a family event and there's nieces and nephews over,
that's a whole different story.
Now your kids are amongst their cousins. Right. The tones go off. It's normal. Could I say normal for them, for dad to know, okay, dad's leaving. We know he's going. It's a big call. We know it. And all the other kids are going like, dude, what's going on? And your kids are like, what? My dad's normal. This is
life. This is what we do. Yeah. So I want to say something here, because interestingly enough, this has kind of turned to, especially the kids, right? One of the things I try to do, and as my kids have gotten older, I don't probably do it as much just because there is some normalcy there, but I try often to give them the cool side of being a firefighter's kid, right? Like how many kids regularly ride in fire trucks, and how many kids, get to go and hang out at a fire station, or get to watch dad cut cars apart at a training, or show up at a practice burn and sit and watch. How many kids get to do that? And my wife and I try to have them, if there's something going on that they're going to find to be cool and they can be there, we let them be there, because they've sacrificed so much and that's normal for them. So let's give them the cool part of it too. Right.
That kind of just goes back to being a Christian in general though, right? Like we have this hope for this future joy, right? This eternal joy. And so it's, you could almost compare it to the sacrifices we make as humans, and the struggles, more so the struggles than the sacrifices, knowing that there's going to be something better afterwards. Right. And so it's kind of that same idea.
So speaking on that, I'll use one of your words. That's a good segue.
Okay. Yeah.
So now we've talked about how is it when PJ had to leave his family, me leaving my family, you leaving your family. Now you go on the call. Let's go back to it's the 60-year-old female that's having difficulty breathing. She got excited because of Christmas. After that call, do you feel more rewarded? A lot of those times when I go on a medical call, if it's something like that, I mean, I'm not the person died on scene or, the big car accident, but I have found a lot of times if this would have happened on December 23rd, it was just part of your job. Mm-hmm. That's, whatever. Yeah. Happens on Christmas Eve, later in the evening. Normally people aren't too excited about Christmas Eve in the morning, but towards the afternoon, we're really ramped up for the Christmas spirit. Or on the 25th, I always feel like people are like, oh, we're so happy you're here. We so appreciate you. Yeah. It's Christmas. We didn't want to call. I mean, do you get that feeling too, or is that just that people seem to appreciate it a little bit more?
I don't think it's, and I don't think it's lost on me, and that might sound bad, not a prideful thing, but like, I know, hey, this is Christmas.
Oh yeah.
And there's a, I guess in a sense, not that I want to leave my family, but I knew this was the decision I made when I signed up. And I'm thankful to do that for others, if that makes sense. In a different, like you said, difficulty breathing 2 days before might be more of an annoyance. Now, we've talked about that. That's an attitude problem on me, right? But now, man, it's Christmas. I want to make sure that I'm giving them absolutely the best, And not to mention now, sometimes you're walking into somebody's house and there's 20 people there instead of 2.
And kids.
Yeah. So now you're trying to, there's so many things that just, it adds another dynamic.
Well, I think there's a difference between being prideful about it, right? And being aware of the work that you're doing, right? Being aware of, helping people, especially around the holidays. I had a call that I went on once where it was a single mom and her son. And I think her mom was at their house and it was like Christmas Eve or something. While the son decided, and the son is, probably 2 years old. He decided that he was going to burn his mail. Because that's what Grandpa does. Grandpa burns the mail. He burns his trash and everything. And he was going to do the same thing, except he decided to do it in his bedroom. And,
Makes sense.
And to hide it from Mom, he did it under his bed.
Oh, wow.
Whoops. So we get called. Well, luckily there were a couple of us at the station. And so it was a real short trip. I went in and hit it with like a fire suit, but they were so grateful because it was Christmas Eve. Mm-hmm. That was their family getting together, even though there were so few of them. But that absolutely would have destroyed their house and, all the gifts and everything. And so there is that appreciation. There's kind of that fulfillment of like, all right, like everything's good now. Everything's good.
Normal, I saved a house. Now
right. It's a
I saved a house on Christmas.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
So there's a little bit of extra, I think, fulfillment that goes into it, but also some, appreciation of being able to have the ability to, help somebody like that.
Right.
There's just that, appreciation for the ability to even just go in and help somebody, knowing that, man, that was like 2 minutes from disaster.
I think that ties into the extra effort that I've seen many times put into, or being a part of putting into, like I said earlier, getting gifts out if there's any way at all, even much sooner than, because property is the last, like it's the lowest on our list of importance. But around that time, often it goes up a little higher. If you can safely get in and pull that stuff out quickly, we tend to do that more often.
And that's some of the most rewarding things I've done. We had a fire, and I don't know if you were on it. It was over on the west side of our district. We had a pretty good fire. And while we were in there on the hose line, I'm looking, and it was I want to say it was a trailer, if I remember right, but just inside it had like a bar. And on this side of the bar was shelves. And I just saw a bunch of pictures there. Well, I'm just kind of standing in the doorway helping make sure the hand line doesn't get snagged. Seeing all these pictures. So I open up my jacket, and I just start shoving all these pictures in my jacket.
Nice, yeah.
And then when I come out, I look like the abominable snowman. And I'm telling guys, I go like, hey, I need help. And they go like, they're thinking I'm having a medical thing. And I'm going like, no. So I start unloading all these pictures.
They're hooking up an AED to you while you're staying
they're
there.
thinking I'm having,
exactly.
I need help getting these out.
How do I override this shock? It's not, Rich, lie down. This will be a lot easier.
Shock advice.
Let me tell you something.
Shut up. Yeah. Wiggle him so it doesn't. But so I think Christmas, unfortunately, people just appreciate it a little bit more.
Right.
Because of that. So, and Steve, you were never, when you worked for the big city doing your previous job, you didn't have those things though, did you? Did you have to come in was there emergency calls where you had to come in and take care of stuff?
I was thinking about that. Yeah. No. So yes, to answer your question, yes.
Because you're a little bit different. We were firefighters and you're.
Yes. So yeah, and I'm sure for the viewers that didn't know, I used to work for a large metropolitan fire department, but I used to be a technician. So I used to
don't tell him, Steve. Make him go back and watch.
I know, just really quick. But I used to work on equipment. But what we used to do back in the earlier days of me doing that job is we had an on-call shift, because what would happen is if for some reason, and it was somewhat common that you get a large fire campaign of some kind, a second alarm or greater kind of campaign, they wanted to have resources there in case they needed people for whatever it may be, whether it's doing the job that you normally would do in repairing things, or if you were standing around, hey, we need people to, carry waters and stuff, or, get things to the guys or whatever. And which is really fun sometimes. I was on some pretty cool calls and got to hang out with the guys and being on the news and all that kind of cool stuff. But
donuts.
I would say somebody owes donuts.
I know. Or ice cream's the other one, Yeah. But no, what we would do is we would trade out. And let me back up too. And then there was a time where we would even take stuff to stations. So if something broke on a weekend, I would have a vehicle that had equipment in there, and then I'd have to run and swap stuff out and whatever like that. So, yes, it was an on-call basis where someone had to do the Christmas Day and Thanksgiving and whatever, and we would trade that stuff out. So yeah, you're sitting there, even in my job, where I'm not responding to emergencies per se at a station when the tone goes off, but something happens, they need me. I used to have a pager, and the pager would go off, and I got to take off. And it did happen a couple times where it was very inconvenient to do it. So I understand in a sense on the volunteer world where, like you were saying before, you're sitting there going, please don't go off right now. Please, I'm really having a good time right now. Please don't go off right now, and every once in a while, nothing you can do, right? It's a job. You're getting paid for it. But I was actually thinking about something too, and I was curious on this. On the flip side, for you guys running the call, how hard is it sometimes for you not to have a bad attitude when you're right in the middle of something and you're going on a call where you're thinking, I really don't want to run this. I'm with my family right now, but I got to do it.
Well, Steve, the trick is to always have a bad attitude, and then nobody knows the difference.
There we go. But no, I mean, you know what I mean? Like in their situation where you're like saying the same thing, I hope the pager doesn't go off right now. And then it does go off and you have to run it. And then you're kind of frustrated because you're interrupting. It's getting interrupting your.
I can touch on that. Like when we were talking about you've lost a patient or whatever, and you come in the door and you open up the closet and you throw the shoes in the closet and you close the door and you come in and you try to your best to be happy dad, that kind of deal. I think for me, it kind of goes in the reverse also. I don't stop at the closet and take shoes out because I've been down that road and it didn't work out so well. So you go out the door and you do your best to kind of, when the door shuts, I'm not dad anymore. I have to go do a job.
Right.
Just like when you come home, sometimes you do a pretty good job of being dad, being back to normal. It goes the other way also on the other side of the door. For me, when I leave, there are some days where you're like, are you kidding me? I hope this is a fast call. I don't have time for this. Those kind of deals. And other days you can go in there and go like, all right, no, we're solid. Things are good. I can go take care of this call.
I think you're onto something though with the shoes in the closet thing though. And in reverse of, when you leave that door, it's like, man, it's just like when you take your boots off and, your like regular boots off and then you step into your turnout gear, right? It's like, I'm taking the dad off and leaving him at home, and then I'm getting into a different mindset and going. And so I think that helps as well.
For me, I have to do that.
Yeah.
And most people do, because what's the first thing when your pager goes off? You're getting that information. You're disseminating it, if that's the right word. You're putting it in your mind, what am I getting into? You're gathering information. And if you wait until you're in the right mood, 30 seconds, like when you're pulling into the station, you may have missed a lot of information. Like this morning or this afternoon, we had a rollover. It came in with 2 patients pinned in upside down on the roof. All right. That's a pretty good picture of what's painted. Don't know the extent of injuries because we don't have any police or anything like that on scene yet. I put a local station on standby just in case it was extrication. I don't know how many people I've got coming. En route, they update me that PD's on scene, the patient's out, and he's not injured. Perfect. Now I'm painting a different picture. So, I think to a point, if you're going to do the job and do it well, you need to do your very best to keep the dad behind.
And the reason I asked that is I remember the days when I was involved with the fire service where you always hear the guys that, got the middle of the night calls where, it was just a frivolous call. And here the guy's upset because he's like, I was sleeping really good. I'm coming out for that. Like, and not saying that.
Listen, I've had those calls. I get it.
But
it
it's
gets
funny.
Frustrating.
Well,
it does get frustrating.
And you hear about it because some guys lose their cool a little bit and then so they're getting in trouble. But you hear those things. And that's what popped in my mind is how, again, especially in the volunteer world where you're not at a station per se losing sleep. You're actually at home, you're with your family, and all of a sudden something comes out and there's no one else to run it and you have to go. And now you're like, here we go. Like another.
Well, and this is another
Christmas
way
Day,
where I think it is tougher to be a volunteer firefighter than it is a full-time. When you're at the station, you're in that mindset, right? I mean, you're in the headspace to do that job because you're going to be there for, 24 hours,
Right.
Or even 48 hours. But when you are interrupted during the course of your life, where you are being your genuine self, and then you have to put on this different hat, if you will, you gotta kind of take those boots off at the door and leave those.
And
those
maybe
things behind.
you've gone to bed because you got to get up early and do something specific or important the next day. You didn't schedule that if you're a full timer because when you get off of work. So you didn't. Now maybe I got to get up at say 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning for some reason because I've had that.
Yeah.
And then you get that fire call and you're like, well, there goes that sleep.
And I've had a more of a unique situation too, where it was around the holidays. I know it was around Christmas. I can't remember which day it was, but we had a bad call, got through it and everything. Coming home, of course, people are over, and it's just like, you're not in that mindset to be there anymore, right? And to coming back, like it's hard to put those shoes in the closet and be present there with everybody.
Almost frustrated with people. Like, do you even know what this world is like? Like
exactly.
I found myself in that.
Exactly. And
somebody just died today and you're acting like life is fine.
And there's been so many times where I've like zoned out in that moment. It just like, I have no idea what you guys are talking about. But then another call comes and I know everyone's going to be mad. Or at least in that situation, I knew everybody was going to be mad, but I went anyway because I was already still in that headspace.
Your headspace is there.
And I'm like, I would rather be there anyway because then the people that I'm going to be with, they're going to know why I'm in a bad mood. They know why I'm frustrated and they know what I'm dealing with right now. And even though I'd rather be at home, and that's another frustration, right? I'd rather be at home and have not gotten a call at all.
Right.
And so it kind of compounds and it builds on that frustration. And, it's tough sometimes. It's tough to put those shoes in the closet sometimes.
I think it comes back to what you kind of talked about earlier. We mentioned, Jake, because on the holidays, it's almost impossible to find that time to decompress, right?
Yeah, I mean, exactly.
You're around people all
We've
the
talked
time,
about ways to deal with calls, and I'm thankful that by God's grace, through Scripture, through the truths of God's Word, I can work through those, and I don't carry PTSD. It doesn't mean you don't have shoes or things. But when you don't have that time to just kind of process and put it away, put it in the closet.
Yep.
Maybe in this illustration, you would say you come home and you're still carrying those shoes. You're still wearing those shoes.
Right.
Because you never had time to really put them in the closet and be done with it.
It's like you think you put it in the closet and then you realize, half an hour later, it's like, oh man, I'm still wearing these. Yeah. It's frustrating.
Yeah.
And then I think what's tough too, especially around the holidays is, especially around Christmas, because it's a cheery holiday, right? There's Christmas cheer and everybody's happy. And that's kind of that expectation that it's going to be a good time. And
maybe you were happy an hour ago before you got the call, right? Having a good time, and they can't figure out why it changed.
And that's the thing. And for me, like, I'm a big Christmas guy. I love Christmas music. I love Christmas everything. I have a Christmas tree up in my office that I put up, and I bought specific for it so that it would fit. Like I took measurements and everything. I love Christmas. But yeah, that is especially tough when there's already that, like, man, I want to be in that Christmas spirit. I forget what song it is that said, our troubles will be far away or far behind or whatever it is. It's not, it's right here. It's right now. I'm wearing them. Right. So.
Well, hey, Chief, great way to lead this topic. I appreciate it, but it's time to, I would say land the plane, but maybe for sake of, we got to land the sleigh.
But so
well played.
What?
Go ahead.
But picture this: we're going to take you down a snowy journey. Okay.
Whoa.
So you're in this sleigh, 10,000 feet. It's a little bit chilly because the sleigh doesn't have very good heat. You're sitting in first class because you're trying to keep up with the Steves in the world.
Where's first class in a sleigh?
Whoa! I have
There's
no
like one
idea.
There's like the driver's seat and then the other seat, the bench.
Well, you could be in the trunk. What kind of coffee are you going to ask for when you're on that sleigh and you're having chili?
I already got mine.
Yeah.
Showed up.
Yeah.
I got, me too.
It did show up. Yeah.
Jake was so
what
kind.
kind of coffee should we be drinking? While
I think everybody should be drinking red flannel coffee. You know.
Hey, is there anything new for us, by the way?
There is, yeah. So, for this, by the time this comes out, no, that's gone actually. Especially now that I sent the rest of it to these two. I
got a care pack. He goes,
easy open pouches.
He talks to me the other day
for
and he's
Steve,
like,
I sent some scissors with it. I'm like, I hope I can send this through the mail. Yeah, by the time this episode comes out, check out. We have 2 new roasts. We have an espresso roast. So any kind of coffee drink you want to make, if you got an espresso maker at home, we've got espresso for you. Otherwise, we have a new roast, a new medium roast out of Mexico called Lantern Light, and it is extremely good. I had some this morning, and I'm ready for more right now. Honestly, I'm a little tired. So,
Lantern Light.
Lantern Light.
Ooh, PJ30 will get you 30% off your coffee order.
Sure will.
30.
Yeah.
All right, 1, 2.
What's the website?
2.
redflannelcoffeeco.com. Thank you. I'm tired. I'm sorry.
I get it. And if our readers have questions, Steve, that email that you set up.
So yes, if you, as a viewer, if you have questions, concerns, comments, want to reach out to us and give us some show ideas, you have some questions, anywhere that God can use us and we can pray together, it's ffifpodcast@gmail.com.
And
I knew you had
something. I want to throw this out there too for our listeners, because I think in November we didn't do as good of a job. But the last episode this month, which is the week of Christmas, will drop on Christmas morning. So don't look for it on Friday. Look for it on Christmas morning.
And being this comes out on Friday mornings, when you get home tonight, water your Christmas tree if you have a real one.
Wait, I'm sorry. It's not Friday morning right now?
It feels like Friday
Chief is
morning.
Chief is not okay.
Yeah. So if you're listening to this live at 6:30 in the morning on Friday, water your Christmas tree. They burn really fast if you let them dry.
Yes.
Wow.
Big danger.
Yeah, that's just watch the videos online about stuff like that. You know, they always have the instruction videos that come out every year on the news and about, they have the set prop and then the Christmas tree goes up. It's like,
I used to do it every year for the kids. That was a big thing. We went in the backyard. I'd intentionally leave it out there for a while and let it get good and dry. And then I'd hit it with a lighter and it'd sit there and it'd take a second. And then it just kind of, once it caught, it just like blew up.
Yeah. It does not take long at all.
No, it is serious danger. So yeah, we got clearance, so we better land this puppy.
All right. Thanks for listening. And we'll talk to you next week.
All right.
See ya.